Xbox Game Pass is already one of the best deals in gaming. But knowing what to actually play inside that massive library, that's a completely different challenge. Scroll through the catalog for 10 minutes and you'll either find your next obsession or close the app out of pure overwhelm, and nobody has time for that. FPS games specifically are where Game Pass absolutely shines. Some of the greatest first-person shooters ever made are sitting right there in your subscription, fully downloaded, ready to play, and most people are walking right past them without even realizing it. Whether you want intense competitive multiplayer, gripping single-player campaigns, or chaotic co-op mayhem with friends, Game Pass has an FPS for every mood. Today, we've done the digging for you. These are the best FPS games on Xbox Game Pass right now. No subscription wasted, just straight-up incredible shooting. Let's get into it.
4 masked robbers, 1 vault, and a plan that almost never survives contact with the first alarm going off. Payday 3 leans hard into that chaos. Stealth runs can fall apart in seconds, forcing your entire crew into a loud, desperate shootout against waves of police response that escalates the longer you drag the heist out. Every job demands actual coordination. Someone hacking a terminal, someone watching cameras, someone holding hostages to buy time. It had a genuinely rocky launch, but consistent updates have culled the core heist and shootout loop back into real shape. If you've got 3 friends and enough patience to plan an actual robbery instead of just running in guns blazing, this is one of the most chaotic co-op shooters currently on Game Pass.
If Deep Rock Galactic is co-op shooting with a smile, Darktide is co-op shooting with a scream. 4 players drop into the hive city of Tertium and fight through waves of cultists and mutants in melee-heavy combat that genuinely rewards positioning over just spraying bullets. The atmosphere is suffocatingly dense. Grimy corridors, oppressive lighting, voice lines that never let you forget how hopeless this universe actually is. Fatstar clearly studied what worked in their previous Warhammer game and pushed the systems even further here. It recently landed on the Essential tier of Game Pass too, putting one of the most intense 4-player horde shooters available right now within reach of literally every subscriber.
4 dwarves, a procedurally generated cave system, and a mission briefing that's basically go dig until something tries to kill you. Deep Rock Galactic sounds simple on paper and turns into one of the most addictive co-op loops in gaming once you're actually inside a cave with 3 friends and the lights start flickering. Every class brings something completely different to the team. One builds platforms, one drills tunnels, one ziplines the whole squad across chasms, and the caves themselves never generate the same way twice. It's currently sitting on the Game Pass Essential tier, meaning even the cheapest subscription gets you access to what might be the best pure co-op shooter available on the entire service right now.
Picture Groundhog Day, except instead of learning to be a better person, you're learning to assassinate 8 targets before the time loop resets and erases your progress. Deathloop turns that premise into one giant evolving puzzle. Every death teaches you a new pattern, a new route, a new weakness you can exploit on the next attempt. Arcane's signature immersive sim DNA is all over this, with multiple ways to approach every single encounter and enemies that react intelligently to how you play. It's stylish, it's darkly funny, and it rewards patience over pure reflexes in a genre that usually only rewards reflexes. This is one of those Game Pass titles people sleep on simply because it doesn't fit neatly into the usual shooter mold.
This game came out in 2016, got buried by a certain other shooter releasing the same week, and has spent nearly a decade quietly building a cult following that refuses to let it die. Titanfall 2's campaign alone is worth the download. A handful of hours packed with more genuinely creative level design than most full-length games manage in 20. Wall running, double jumping, and calling down a mech that can flip the entire tide of a firefight make the movement here feel unmatched even now. The multiplayer still has a dedicated community actively queuing up matches today. Respawn built something so mechanically ahead of its time that other shooters are still catching up to it. If you've never played it, Game Pass just handed you 0 excuses left.
Most roguelite shooters ask you to grind the same handful of upgrades over and over. RoboQuest instead throws build variety at you like a slot machine that's actually rigged in your favor. Dozens of weapons, wild perk combinations, and a class system that changes how every single run feels.
One attempt, you're a shotgun and shockwave tank charging straight into rooms. The next, you're a ranged glass cannon kiting enemies around cover. The art style pops with bright, almost cartoonish color, which makes the escalating chaos on screen easier to read even when the whole arena is exploding. It rewards repetition without ever feeling repetitive, which is the hardest trick in the entire roguelite genre. It's a shockingly deep, criminally overlooked pick buried in the Game Pass library.
Imagine if id Software's original Doom got dropped straight into the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, chunky pixels and all. That's exactly what Bulkum delivers. A retro-styled boomer shooter throwback where you're a space marine mowing down heretics and demons with a bolter that sounds like a small cannon going off in your hands. No regenerating shields, no reloading mid-fight to catch your breath, just speed, gore, and level design built entirely around momentum. It nails the aesthetic of Warhammer 40k without needing a AAA budget to do it, proving the boomer shooter revival has real staying power. If you grew up on Doom and Quake and want that exact feeling wrapped in Space Marine armor, this is one of the most underrated picks currently sitting on Game Pass.
Before Eternal cranked the chaos up to 11, this was the game that brought Doom back from the dead and reminded everyone why the original 1993 classic mattered in the first place. id Software stripped away the regenerating health, modern shooter handholding, and slow ADS aiming that had taken over the genre and replaced it with something almost primal. Glory kills, a shotgun that feels like a small explosion, and demons that never stop coming. It's tighter and more focused than its sequel, which actually makes it the better entry point if you're new to the series. This is the game that proved fast, brutal, old-school shooters still had a massive audience in the modern era. On Game Pass, it's basically a mandatory rite of passage.
This isn't a shooter where you hide behind cover and wait for your health to regenerate. Doom Eternal punishes that instinct completely. Run out of ammo, and the game forces you into melee range for a chainsaw kill just to refill it. Getting low on health means you need to rush in and rip a demon apart with your bare hands instead of retreating. It's built entirely around aggression, and once that rhythm clicks, few shooters on the planet feel this fast or this violent. The soundtrack alone turns every arena into a heavy metal fever dream. It's sitting right there on Game Pass, and if you've never played a Doom game that demanded you think 3 moves ahead mid-fire fight, this is the one that will completely change how you see the genre.
Ubisoft handed players an entire fictional Caribbean nation to liberate one corrupt outpost at a time, with dictator Anton Castillo delivering one of the more memorable performances the series has produced. Guns here range from the practical to the genuinely ridiculous. A backpack that launches CDs like buzzsaws is a real weapon you can craft and use. The open world is dense with side content, resistance fighters to recruit, and explosions around literally every corner. It leans hard into over-the-top spectacle rather than trying to be tactical or grounded, and once you accept that's the point, it becomes a genuinely fun, chaotic power fantasy. Sitting on Game Pass, it's one of the biggest, most content-packed open-world shooters on the entire service. Bethesda's first brand new universe in over 25 years dropped players into more than 1,000 explorable planets, a shipbuilding system deep enough to obsess over for hours, and a scale of ambition few studios would even attempt. It launched to a mixed reception, largely because expectations were sky high after years of hype, but consistent updates and expansions since then have sharpened the experience considerably. Building and customizing your own ship down to individual components, then flying it into actual combat remains one of the most satisfying loops in the entire game. As a Day 1 Game Pass release that's kept receiving free content well past launch, it represents exactly the kind of long-term value the service was originally built to prove out.
Obsidian took everything they learned building New Vegas and pointed it at outer space instead. Corporate satire this sharp is rare in a genre usually more concerned with dragons and dungeons. Every corporation you meet across this solar system is somehow more absurd and more evil than the last, and the writing never lets you forget it, without ever tipping into pure parody. Combat blends real-time shooting with a slow-motion tactical mode that lets you target specific limbs mid-fight, giving fights a river that's satisfying without being overly complicated. It's shorter and tighter than most open-world RPGs, which honestly works in its favor. There's very little filler dragging down the pace. On Game Pass, it's one of the most purely fun sci-fi shooters currently available.
Forget the main quest for a second. The real achievement of New Vegas is how much it lets your choices actually reshape the entire Mojave Wasteland. Obsidian built 4 different factions fighting over the Hoover Dam, and every single one of them has legitimate, well-written reasons for wanting control. Your reputation with each faction actually changes how NPCs treat you, what quests unlock, and which ending you're steering toward. The gunplay is dated by today's standards, sure, but the writing and the sheer density of choice and consequence packed into this game still hasn't been matched by most RPGs released since. It's a certified classic sitting comfortably on Game Pass, and it remains one of the most replayable games ever made. Riot took the tactical, round-based structure of games like Counter-Strike and bolted on character abilities that completely change how every single round can be won. Smoke walls, teleporting flanks, wall-piercing scans. Valorant's agents turn positioning and utility into just as much of a weapon as your aim. It's fully free to play on Xbox now, and Game Pass members get a real edge on top of that. Every current and future agent unlocked immediately, no unlock grind required. Competitive integrity here is razor tight, which is exactly why it's become one of the biggest esports titles on the planet within just a few years of launch. If precise gunplay wrapped around genuine strategy is your thing, this belongs at the top of your download queue.
This game has been out for a decade, and it is still one of the most tactically demanding shooters anyone can play. Destructible walls, floors, and ceilings mean no room in Rainbow Six Siege is ever truly safe. You can breach through a ceiling instead of a door, or reinforce a wall your enemies were counting on breaking through. With dozens of operators, each carrying wildly different gadgets and abilities, matches turn into layered chess games where positioning and information matter more than raw aim. It's had a full relaunch at Siege X, bringing new modes and a cleaner new player experience to a game that used to have a brutal learning curve. Available through Game Pass with extra in-game perks attached, this remains one of the deepest tactical shooters ever built.